Have you ever asked yourself whether one man could truly change the course of history? Could a single outlaw, hiding in the forests, become the embodiment of justice for the common people, defying the law of kings and sheriffs alike? The legend of Robin Hood is one of the most captivating stories of resistance, rebellion, and righteousness. But beyond the tales of archery and gold, there's much more to the man we think we know. Today, we dive deep into the untold story of Robin Hood, his life, his times, and the truths often forgotten or overshadowed by folklore. Introduction: Who was Robin Hood? We all know Robin Hood as the outlaw who stole from the rich and gave to the poor. But what if I told you that the real story is much more complex? Robin Hood wasn't just a rogue with a bow and arrow. He was a symbol of rebellion against an unjust system, a man whose legend grew in an age where common folk had little to no recourse against the crushing weight of feudal lords. So who was he, really? A bandit? A noble? A revolutionary? Historians have long debated the true identity of Robin Hood. Some say he was an actual historical figure, perhaps a disenfranchised noble, like the Earl of Huntingdon, Robert of Locksley. Others claim he was merely a product of folklore, a character born out of the people's frustration with corrupt rulers. The truth, as it often is with legends, likely lies somewhere in between. What we do know is that the legend of Robin Hood first began to take shape in the late 13th century, around the time of England's struggles with political instability, high taxes, and famine. The origins of Robin Hood. The earliest ballads about Robin Hood were not necessarily about a noble fighting for the rights of the poor. In fact, the first stories depicted him as more of a common man, skilled in archery and swordplay, who fought against the oppressive Sheriff of Nottingham. And here's where things get interesting. Robin's acts of defiance weren't just about taking money and redistributing it to the poor. In these early tales, Robin is shown as a man dedicated to upholding a strict sense of justice, a kind of outlaw chivalry, if you will. He targeted those who abused their power, the greedy nobles, the corrupt sheriffs, and the clergymen who exploited their positions. But perhaps the most important element of his rebellion was his loyalty to the common people. Unlike other rebels of the time, who often fought for personal gain or political power, Robin's cause seemed more altruistic, grounded in a deep moral code that resonated with the oppressed. One of the lesser-known aspects of Robin Hood's story is that he was also deeply loyal to the idea of a just ruler. Some versions of the legend suggest that Robin was a supporter of King Richard the Lionheart, who was away on crusades while his brother, Prince John, usurped the throne and imposed heavy taxes. Robin's rebellion wasn't necessarily against the crown itself, but against those who betrayed the king's trust, men like the Sheriff of Nottingham and Prince John, who bled the people dry while the rightful king fought for Christendom. The Merry Men, a band of brothers. Of course, Robin Hood wasn't alone in his crusade for justice. His band of merry men, each a legend in his own right, played a vital role in Robin's struggle. But there's more to these characters than meets the eye. Take Little John, for instance. His name, ironically, suggests he was small in stature, but in reality, he was said to be a giant of a man, second only to Robin in leadership and skill. His loyalty to Robin was unshakable, and in many versions of the legend, it was Little John who stood by Robin's side in his final moments. Then there's Will Scarlet, often depicted as a hot-headed but skilled fighter. What's lesser known is that in some tales, Will is Robin's nephew, a personal connection that adds depth to their relationship. His impulsive nature and thirst for revenge often contrasted with Robin's more calculated approach, but together, they made a formidable pair. And let's not forget Friar Tuck, a most unusual addition to the band. A defrocked monk, Friar Tuck's story is one of the most fascinating parts of the legend. He represents the idea that not all members of the clergy were corrupt. Tuck was a man of God, yes, but he was also a man of the people. He wasn't afraid to fight for what he believed in, even if that meant breaking with the church. Finally, we come to Maid Marian, perhaps the most enigmatic figure in the legend. Was she a noblewoman who fell in love with Robin? Or was she, as some stories suggest, an outlaw herself, fighting alongside him as his equal? Either way, she represents more than just a romantic interest. She symbolizes the justice and purity Robin fought for. Robin's code, honor among outlaws. One of the most intriguing, and often overlooked, parts of the Robin Hood legend is the strict moral code by which Robin and his men lived. Far from being a lawless band of thieves, Robin's crew operated with a code of ethics that set them apart from other criminals of the time. For example, Robin and his men never harmed women or children. They only targeted the rich who had gained their wealth through exploitation. And even when they stole, they did so with a purpose: to redistribute wealth in a way that leveled the playing field for the poor. They upheld the idea of a just outlaw, someone who may break the law, but only because the law itself has become unjust. This code of honor resonated deeply with the common folk of the time, who saw in Robin a champion for their cause. In a world where the law often worked against the poor, Robin Hood represented a beacon of hope. His defiance of authority wasn't reckless, it was a calculated rebellion against a corrupt system. Robin Hood, the man behind the legend. So, was Robin Hood a real person? It's hard to say for sure. But what we do know is that the legend of Robin Hood became much more than just a story. It became a symbol of resistance against tyranny, of loyalty to one's fellow man, and of hope for a better, fairer world. Interestingly, the idea of Robin Hood has evolved over time. In the early ballads, he was portrayed as a violent, somewhat ruthless figure, far from the gallant hero we think of today. But as the centuries passed, Robin's image softened. By the 16th century, he had become a model of chivalry and a defender of the weak. One of the lesser-known stories about Robin Hood is his death. Unlike many heroic figures, Robin doesn't die in battle or go out in a blaze of glory. Instead, he is betrayed by someone he trusted, a prioress, who, according to some versions of the legend, lets him bleed to death after a botched medical procedure. This quiet, almost anticlimactic death adds a layer of tragedy to Robin's story, reminding us that even the greatest heroes are not immune to betrayal. Conclusion: the legacy of Robin Hood. The legend of Robin Hood endures because it speaks to something timeless: the desire for justice in an unjust world. His story, whether rooted in fact or fiction, reminds us that even in the darkest of times, there is always room for hope, for rebellion, for change. In the end, Robin Hood may not have been a single man. He may have been many men, or he may have been no one at all. But the idea of Robin Hood, the outlaw who stood up for what was right, who defied the powerful and protected the powerless, will live on for centuries to come. And that, more than any archery contest or sword fight, is the true legacy of Robin Hood. If you enjoyed learning about the untold side of Robin Hood's story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more epic tales from history. Thank you for watching. Until next time.